This is one of the baddest, if not the baddest, speedies that Omega makes. And by bad, I don't mean actually bad. I mean tough. I mean cool. I mean interesting and unique. This is the updated version of the Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon Apollo 8 that came out nearly 2 years ago. It may look very similar to the first gen Apollo 8, which is much older, but this one is pretty different. It's inferior in some ways, but I think much better in other ways, and the good greatly outweighs the bad, in my opinion. Thank you to Exquisite Timepieces for sending this watch in for review. Exquisite is a family-owned AD in Florida. They carry over 60 brands. They're my Omega recommended authorized dealer. I've bought from them personally many times over the years. So if you're shopping any Omega or any of the brands that they carry, I definitely recommend Exquisite, and a link is below. Now, what is different about this Gen 2 Apollo 8 versus the first version, which I was a big fan of that one? The biggest thing is a reworked movement. Instead of a non-hacking, non-certified 1869 Lamania-based caliber, this now has an updated 3869 movement, which is significantly improved with a coaxial escapement, a silicone hairspring, a longer power reserve, and it receives a master chronometer certification, which I think is a big deal. The laser ablated components of the dial and the movement, they're slightly deeper, they're slightly more detailed, a little bit more crisp. The dial side of the watch depicts the front of the moon, while the movement side of the watch depicts the geography of the dark side of the moon, and I think that's pretty awesome. The sub-seconds hand now features a titanium representation of the Saturn V rocket, the rocket that made a moon landing possible for the United States. It's surprisingly detailed with the black markings, the stabilizing fins, and the USA print, though you can only notice these details under a loupe or under a macro lens. The case has been thinned out by about 0.8 millimeters, and that might not seem like a whole lot, but I think it is a big difference and one for the positive. This wears very nicely on my 7.25-inch wrist. And because of this trimming down, Omega had to slightly bend the tips of the minute hand and the chronoseconds hand so that they could fit under the new shape of this sapphire crystal. The strap appears the same as the first gen, but it's now crafted out of rubber as opposed to a leather top, and this makes it a bit tougher against water, against oil. I think that's a great move on the brand's part. And then lastly, Omega changed the loomed bezel insert and the loomed crown logo to just be basic white enamel. And honestly, I'm not a fan of this move. I loved the loomed elements of the first generation Apollo 8. I thought it made it a little more special than the scores of other Speedmasters that just had basic indexing, whether it was printed or done in enamel. Though one might argue that Apollo 8 going around the dark side of the moon, being cut off from Earth communication, and not seeing the sun is a little more in keeping or a little more fitting with less lume in this watch in dark conditions. But you know what? I think that's a stretch. My own opinion is that, Omega just found it easier or cheaper to do enamel versus SLN lume, which again is a shame, and it's the only clear downgrade to the now much more expensive second generation. Now, why depict the moon on the dial and the movement? Well, really, this celebrates the important mission of Apollo 8 that took place in December of 1968. This was the first manned mission to leave Earth orbit. It was absolutely vital in the development of the lunar program and the forthcoming landing on the moon, which would take place in a year from that date. Now, these were the first humans on Apollo 8 to travel to the moon and to glimpse the back side of the moon, or the dark side of the moon, with their own eyes. They were the first to see an Earthrise. It really was a significant space flight. Apollo 8 orbited the moon 10 different times before safely returning to Earth in a roughly 6-day mission. They spent about 24 hours at the moon and the remaining 5 days was traveling to the moon and then back from the moon to the Earth. I love that Omega is paying tribute to that flight. I love how they tied in the geography of the front and reverse sides of the moon. To me, this is more than just a cool looking ceramic chronograph. This celebrates one of, I don't want to overstate this, but one of mankind's biggest achievements to date. The reverse of the watch has Commander Jim Lovell's famous words that he spoke just before radio contact was cut off for that first orbit of the moon going around the dark side. He said, "We'll see you on the other side." That's nice to see here on the reverse of this watch. Now, who is this Apollo 8 for? I think it's for fans of Omega, fans of the Speedy, fans of space history, fans of Apollo 8. I think the question is more, who is this watch not for? And to that, I would say someone who wants a smaller, more conservative, more versatile watch that's not as large and loud. Now, again, this watch is large, it is busy, it is beautiful, and it is extremely scratch resistant. The movement is very highly tested, it's accurate, it's robust, with that independent certification by the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology. My only real complaint about this model is the fact that it's getting so pricey. With Omega's recent price increase in the United States, full retail is $15,000. The first gen Apollo 8 was 10.7, and I thought that was a pricey watch. This is a better watch, yes, but that is still a significant price hike in the space of just a few years. So I think the price will keep some from buying this beauty, and it's a sad reality of the current watch market. The average watch collector's hard-earned money, it just doesn't go as far today. Do I want one? You better believe I do. I love this watch. I do hope to buy one someday. Let me know what you think of this Dark Side of the Moon Apollo 8. Please reach out with any questions. And for those shopping Omega, definitely consider Exquisite Timepieces. I'll see you next time.